I think I've got some realistic things that the Florida Gators can do in order to maybe help turn this season around a little bit. We'll talk about that here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy Tuesday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports, Giants Country, NFL 33. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And we're getting right into it today. I think that there are some things that the Florida Gators can do to improve the rest of this season. And I know that yesterday we talked a bit about how some things you can't fix. I don't think you could fix the offensive line at this point. I don't think you could fix how weak you are in the secondary or how inconsistent you are in the secondary. But there are some things that I think you can fix that are actually possible. Because a big part of this is also you can't change much philosophically at this point in the season. You've got 4 regular season games left. Can't change too much philosophically. I think for me, using Eugene Wilson III as an actual wide receiver is up there for some of the most realistic things that you can achieve here. Eugene Wilson III is incredibly dynamic with the ball in his hands. We've talked about this countless times on this show where I truly don't remember ever seeing a true freshman wide receiver make an impact on this offense or on any offense schematically the way that Eugene Wilson III has. Again, you talk about all the jet motion, moving him into the slot, moving him into the backfield every now and then. It's ridiculous. Like, it's incredible to see. But he's nothing more than a gadget right now. And I don't mean that as an insult. Ever since I got into media, I have always said a gadget is not a negative thing. There's a role for gadget players. That's fine. But Eugene Wilson III can be way more than a gadget. He's just used almost exclusively as a gadget right now. He's got more yards after the catch this season than he has total receiving yards because most of his catches come from behind the line of scrimmage. Okay? And he's got what, the second or third most catches on the team, second most yards, I believe, or at least receiving yards. And most of it's come behind the scrimmage, and he's been effective there. He's been effective. I'm not saying you've got to give him a full, complete route tree or anything like that. Even if you look at the Georgia game, that his 20-something yard touchdown was on a dig route, and it still got to allow him to do that jet motion that they love using him on. He ran jet motion from the right side to the left slot, and then he ran up and a dig. And he scored a touchdown on it. Like, I'm not saying you've got to go, run a post, run a corner, run all these things. I'm just saying open it up a little bit. Allow him to be an actual wide receiver. Because for as shifty as he is with the ball in his hands, he is also a very fluid mover without the ball. When he's given the opportunity to run routes and get open, he does a pretty good job. He's a solid route runner, especially for a true freshman. So even if we're talking more slants, more digs, even if you, for some reason, feel that you need to keep it close to the line of scrimmage, do that. That's fine. Just let him play actual wide receiver. Because again, right now, he's just a gadget. I would love to see him run vertical. I would love to see him be given that opportunity to actually stretch the field a little bit, because we talk all the time about how he's so dynamic and that he's fast. And although I will continue to say I think he's shiftier than he is fast, kind of like that Kadarius Toney style, where he's just electric with the ball in his hands. He moves like he doesn't have ligaments in his knees. He's just incredibly dynamic. Eugene Wilson III, I think, is a bit faster, less creative after the catch, but he's still fast enough where you could stretch the field with him vertically. Again, I'm not saying you have to make him a deep threat. Just allow him to do whatever. Like, don't use him like Deshaun Jackson or Jalen Hyatt, but just let him stretch the field a little bit. Let him get the ball past the line of scrimmage a little bit. I think that helps open up the offense because so often defenses, when they defend Eugene Wilson running that jet sweep, most of the time they get to just key in on if he gets this ball, he's getting it behind the line of scrimmage, in the flat, in the backfield, straight up, whatever it is. That dig route where he scored the touchdown on, that was set up by a season long of if he gets the ball, it's most likely behind the line of scrimmage. It's most likely in that flat area. It's not that he's moving downfield at all. And it's fine to be that gadget player. Again, I have no issue with a gadget player. I don't want to make that come off as I'm saying he's worse because of that, because he's not. He's incredibly talented. He's incredibly dynamic. I think you're actually limiting him at this point. He's got what, 40 targets on the season? Two of them were 20 plus yards downfield. He's got 41 targets. Two of them were 20 plus yards downfield. Four of them were 10 to 19 yards downfield, which, by the way, he caught three of those for 60 yards. He's got 61% of his targets behind the line of scrimmage. He's got 142 yards when you target him behind the line of scrimmage. He's got 221 yards after the catch there. Again, and I'm not saying that he needs to be used as like Ricky Pearsall. I don't need him to do that. But you can make your offense better by just opening up his role a little bit to allow him to play receiver, allow him to run routes, allow him to get open, allow him to work himself free from coverage. It can open up the deep game. It can allow Ricky Pearsall to run deep while Eugene Wilson III runs a slant or runs a dig. That doesn't have to be Ricky. Ricky can get open downfield. Ricky can run that route. But allowing Eugene Wilson III's role to expand, something that could be happening this season. That's not asking you to change the offense from a philosophical standpoint. That's not asking you to reinvent the wheel here. You can keep that jet motion that you love. You can keep putting him in the backfield. Let him run Texas routes. Let him run whatever. But you can just open up this offense and raise the ceiling of this offense by allowing him to actually play wide receiver. I have another suggestion in the passing game that can make some improvements, and it's Trevor Etienne. But we will talk about that in just a second. First, today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Game Time, and we are less than a week away from the Florida Gators taking on and hosting the Arkansas Razorbacks. And if you're looking for tickets this late, which, by the way, I am going to this game. That's the plan right now. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price, and if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 with Game Time. So download the Game Time app. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And last segment was about Eugene Wilson III opening up the passing game. Now we're talking about Trevor Etienne getting more involved in the passing game because he should. And I want to start this by saying that Billy Napier deserves a bit of credit for getting running backs more involved in the passing game as actual receivers this year. Because last season, first off, you had Naquan Wright, who 2 or 3 years ago was like one of the top receiving back in the SEC. And last year, he was completely ghosted by this offense. Last year, you look at what the running backs did in the passing game. Lorenzo Lingard had 2 catches. Naquan Wright had 1 catch. Trevor Etienne had 9 catches. Montrell Johnson had 12 catches, 24 catches on the season combined for running backs with uh, 30 targets combined for running backs. They brought in Cam Carroll and Trayon Webb this year. Cam Carroll from the transfer portal, Trayon Webb from high school. Cam Carroll, of course, unfortunately got injured before the season started, so he never made an impact. But the plan was for him to be a big part of the passing game. He's supposed to be your passing down back. He's supposed to be your pass catching back out of the backfield. 24 catches last year for running backs. This year, so far, you've got 37 catches from your running backs. Montrell Johnson has 20 of them. Trevor Etienne has 13 of them. Trayon Webb has 4 of them. I love that. I'm not going to pretend that I have any issues with throwing to the running backs. I understand that for a lot of guys, it's stop throwing to the guys that aren't the best receivers on the team and all these complaints that they get. And I fully understand those. I'm not saying that you're wrong if you think that you shouldn't throw to the running backs as much. But the fact of the matter remains, Florida has actively tried to get the running back passing game going, working screens and swings and just hitting the flat and running those boots and running and hitting the flat. And Billy Napier does deserve credit for expanding there. Because when you look at the running backs, the personnel hasn't changed much. The huge majority of the snaps still go to Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne like they did last year. Early in the season, Naquan Wright was there, yes, but huge majority, Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne. Now, my issue with this expansion isn't that you're throwing to running backs more. It's that you're throwing to Montrell Johnson more than Trevor Etienne. Because Trevor Etienne is the more dynamic running back here. He always has been. He's the more dynamic running back. Getting him involved in the passing game, it allows him to get more one-on-one opportunities to shake someone. You can look at throwing that flat, and then he's got a corner in front of him. Shake a corner. Corners tend to be bad at tackling. You run an angle route, linebackers tend to bite on that outbreaker, and then you can run in and pick up yards there. Florida is not big on the angle route, but just hypothetically, that's something you can do there. There is genuinely, I don't think there's really, I think there's genuinely no reason to throw to Montrell Johnson more than you throw to Trevor Etienne. I understand getting the ball to Montrell Johnson versus defensive backs. You want to do that. Again, if you're looking at corners, corners are generally considered not very physical. Montrell Johnson is considered physical. Great. You look at safeties, they got to come all the way down and make that stop. You can pick up yards. You've got momentum. You can make someone shake. You can do a bunch of things there. But I also just look at this as Montrell Johnson has been targeted 28 times. He's got 20 catches. So of the 28 times he's been targeted, 8 has been incompletions. 4 of those 8 have been drops by Montrell Johnson. 4 drops on 28 targets. He has the most drops on the team. He has 4. Second place is 2. Second place is Ricky Pearsall, obviously. But Montrell has the most drops on the team, the 3rd most targets on the team. And again, this isn't me saying don't throw to him at all. This is me saying I understand wanting to get the running backs more involved in the passing attack. I don't know why you're doing it a lot more with Montrell than Trevor Etienne. That's the part I don't get. Maybe, your running game is more effective with Trevor Etienne on the field, and so you run more with him, and that's how you get the ball in his hands instead of with Montrell. You have to check it down to him and throw it to him or whatever the case may be. But then you also look at Trevor Etienne lines up out wide more than Montrell Johnson does, and you think, oh, they might get a little more creative here. You can run a slant. You can go vertical. You can run a dig. You can run a hitch. You can run the screen out wide. You can do a bunch of things here. And they just don't really do that with Trevor Etienne. It's a little odd. I'm not going to lie, but it's a little odd. But Trevor Etienne, been targeted 13 times, has 13 catches. He has 88 yards, 6.8 yards per catch, basically the same yards per catch as Montrell Johnson. and roughly the same yards after the catch per catch. Montreal has a little more, which again, I'm not super concerned with that because Montreal Johnson is getting the ball farther behind the line of scrimmage on average, so he's picking up more yards that way, and it's not even that dramatic of a deal there. Tryon Webb's been very sparingly used, mostly in garbage time situations. But I just think when you look at how can we get the ball to our most dynamic playmakers as often as we can, you consider Trevor Etienne one of your most dynamic playmakers. If not your most dynamic, you can consider him that. I think Eugene Wilson III is the most dynamic playmaker. I think Ricky Pearsall is the best playmaker. I think Trevor Etienne is the best runner. And I think that's a great combination, a great trio to have. And you look at, okay, we're going to throw the ball to running backs more this year than we did last year because one, that's what Graham Mertz likes to do. That's what Graham Mertz likes to do. And two, it helps us be more effective. Maybe we like our running backs better now that they're better in pass protection. We've seen that than they were last year. Maybe they're just better options there. But I will say that I don't know why you throw to Montreal more than Trevor Etienne, unless your reason is our run game is more effective with Trevor Etienne on the field. So we run it more when Trevor's on the field as opposed to with Montreal. We check it down to him more because he's just better in that way. Either way, I think checking it down to Trevor Etienne could help open up your passing game just overall, and it could help your offense maybe succeed a little bit more, even though your offense hasn't been the biggest issue. Your biggest issue has probably been your defense. And for that one, we are going to talk about that in just a second. But before we talk about that, today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. It's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options. I hit a parlay during Monday Night Football. Let me get the odds for you real quick, because I was very happy to do it. I figured with the Lions games now, I'm just going to bet on Sam Laporta and just expect him to cash. I bet that he would score a touchdown, that he would have 50 plus receiving yards, which he did, and 6 plus catches, which he did. Odds were 480 plus 485. 50% boost brought him to 727. That cashed. That was fun. That was beautiful. I'm just saying. That's how I made money last night. Visit fanduel.com/locked on and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Thanks, Jen, for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And to wrap up today's show, we are talking about this defense, which has been the weakest part of this team so far. I know that they've just been so off at times. It's like, oh, the pass rush is working, coverage isn't. Coverage is working because we're dropping 8. The pass rush isn't working. And the issue that I have is that Austin Armstrong's defense hasn't really changed in principle, like in terms of looking at the coverages and what blitzes and all that stuff. But the aggressiveness has been dialed back in such a weird way. The only reason I could think of is you had worse players at Southern Miss, so you were overly aggressive to try to kind of cover that gap that you had there. Um, but even then, just with Southern Miss last year, their starting Jack, he was used as a pass rusher on 81% of his pass defense snaps. Princely Umanmielen, just under 78% now. 3% is not a huge gap, obviously, but over the course of a season, that adds up a bit. So for me, I think that's weird, and I especially don't like it because we look at what Princely Umanmielen is doing as a pass rusher. Just statistically, he's a beast, and you look at what he does on film. He's consistently beating his blocker quickly. I hate how consistently he's not rushing the passer. Almost 25% of the time, not rushing the passer is just. It doesn't sound to me, and I understand that I'm just me. I'm not a coach. It doesn't sound to me like a winning formula there. Oh, you're incredibly efficient doing this. We're going to ask you to do it a little bit less. You look at the top off ball linebackers for Southern Miss last year. They used three very heavily. Florida, of course, uses Scooby Williams and Shamar James. But Southern Miss, they rushed 28.1% of the time. So they blitzed 28.1% of their passing downs, 21% of their passing downs, and 18.8% of their passing downs, respectively. You look at Florida, Scooby Williams is being used as a blitzer on 24.2% of passing downs, and Shamar 15.1%. Again, those are the only two linebackers that have played enough to give a sample size. Derek Wing goes at like 30 something percent, but he has not played often. So looking at just those numbers, who you're going to be your primary blitzers for any team that is like, hey, we're going to blitz, we're going to send five at you. Off ball linebackers are the most likely guys to blitz there. So Southern Miss, 28.1%, Scooby's at 24.2. Then you look at Southern Miss's least used linebacker in pass rushing, 18.8. Shamar's at 15.1. You look at what Southern Miss did with their star player, that nickel defender, blitzed on 12.8% of snaps. Not a huge percentage, but just under 13%. Jaden Hill, Florida Gators starting star player, 5.3%. And this isn't me coming out here going, you need to be incredibly aggressive. You need to blitz. You need to send people. Because I understand, and we've talked about this a lot, even when there's immediate pressure, the secondary has been so inconsistent that you could just chuck it up and there's a decent chance that one of your receivers is going to come down with the ball. Like you look at the South Carolina game, it happened a couple of times where pressure got in almost immediately. Spencer Rattler just threw it up and a receiver came down with it, whether it was an open receiver or whether it was a receiver being covered and the DB just did not make a play on the ball, which Florida has, well, both of those things happen quite a bit where it's either, hey, they're wide open or hey, they're blanketed, but we're not going to make a play on the ball. So I'm not saying that I need an incredibly aggressive defense. What I am saying, though, is the thing that helped Austin Armstrong build his very strong reputation amongst other coaches, and what helped other coaches go, oh, this young guy, he's incredibly talented. What helped Austin Armstrong get hired at Southern Miss and be the youngest defensive coordinator in college football, and then get hired at Alabama for a week before he got hired to be the defensive coordinator of the Florida Gators. The thing that helped him do all that was not just this kid's aggressive. It was not just his aggression. It was his creativity with pressure packages. And he just hasn't done that. Not that he's done it poorly, not that he's all of a sudden bad. He's gotten more conservative as a defensive play caller. And I will say, I'm not saying I know this at all. I'm just saying maybe that's a Napier thing. Maybe Napier's like, hey, I get it. You want to be really aggressive, but let's not shoot ourselves in the foot too often here. Maybe. I don't think that's what it is, but maybe it is. Maybe it's Austin Armstrong saying, hey, at Southern Miss, I had less talent than everyone else. I had to blitz the hell out of them so that we can give ourselves a chance. Spoiler alert, right now you have less talent than a lot of the SEC at Florida still until you get all these new guys in that should help you get there. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's him just going, okay, growing up, getting to the higher level. Offenses are more complex. Quarterbacks are better than they were. Maybe I need to make that change. I don't know what it is. But I will tell you that Austin Armstrong is not being as aggressive as he was at Southern Miss, the frequency that he was at Southern Miss. I will say Austin Armstrong is not doing really what got him hired here. So I think that one thing Austin Armstrong can do to get himself back in the spot where he should be is get back to what got him here. get back to being more aggressive. Especially when you got the last few games of the season, you're playing some tough offenses. Get a bit more aggressive. Screw it. I mean, at this point, one game away from bowl eligibility. Aside from that, you're not playing for too much. Just go nuts, and obviously don't go nuts, but just rev it up a little bit. Try to generate more pressure. Try to create more plays because you're not creating pressure consistently enough right now. You're not creating turnovers at all. Make some freaking plays. Try to put your guys in the best position to do that. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with Hayden Hanson. Talk more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports, Giants Country, NFL 33, and I'll see you all tomorrow.